for anyone who knows Representative Griffin, apparently her father passed away a couple days ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I know her husband wasn't doing well either.
Okay, we are live now. Senator Gray?
And my clock just changed to 9 o'clock, so
Okay.
let's see if I've got the right page here on the script. Welcome, I'm Senator James Gray. Today we'll be having public hearings on Senate Bill 52, 53, and 8. Before I get started, I will read through the checklist to ensure that the meeting that we are holding is in compliance with the right to know law. As chair of the Senate Election Law and Municipal Affairs Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom webinar for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and selected legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously watch and listen to the meeting on Zoom and YouTube and via the phone by following the directions and links provided on the general court website. We have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting in the Senate calendar. We are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please email remotesenate@leg.state.nh.us or call 603-271-6931. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn and reschedule. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Finally, let us start the meeting by taking roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state where you are and if anyone else is in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Thank you. I'll call the roll now. Senator Birdsell.
I am here in my home in Hampstead, and currently I'm alone in the kitchen/office, but my husband will be coming in and out.
Senator Ward.
Here in my home and started, and I am alone in the room.
Senator Susie notified me before the meeting that she is testifying in another committee. Is Senator Susie back yet, or?
Mr. Chairman, I am here. They're having some technical difficulties, so I will have to jump into another hearing, but I am at my home in Manchester. I am alone. I am accompanied by 2 terminals at which I am trying to testify and join back at our committee. So I will leave momentarily, but will rejoin. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And Senator Perkins-Coca.
Yes, sir. I'm at my in-laws' home outside of Hartford, Connecticut, and I'm alone in the room.
All right, and I am Senator Gray. I am here in Rochester in my home, and I'm alone in this room. All right, so the first bill that we have on the calendar is Senate Bill 52. Do we have the prime sponsor in the audience?
We do. It's Senator Avard and now to talk.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
Kevin.
All right, wonderful. It's good to see you all. Hi, Murray. All right. So anyway, yeah. So SB 52. This bill was brought to my attention by a former alderman, Dan Moriarty, who was very concerned, along with a lot of folks in Nashua, about what seems to be an out of control spending and upshifting of blame on the state for the high property taxes. In 1993, there was a spending cap that was voted on by referendum in Nashua. And previous administrations have abided by the spirit of the law by supermajority vote if they needed to bypass it. Until recent years, the spending cap seems to have been bypassed by a loophole that was in the law. In 2017, I believe it was former Alderman Dan Moriarty and Fred T-Boone that brought a lawsuit to the state all the way up to and it went all the way up to the Supreme Court, where they found that because there was a loophole in the language, the spending cap could not be enforced. So this bill basically, under the direction or at least conversation with the Supreme Court, not authorized by them, but just spoken with them as to maybe possible ways to work with the language so that the will of the people from 1993 would be obeyed by their local representatives in the alderman and mayor administration. So that's why I'm bringing this bill in. It's basically simple language to fix the loopholes. There does seem to appear to be a way to get around the spending cap, which again was voted on by the people through a referendum. And so this is in support of that. And I'm going to ask if the committee would defer to the particulars and questions to Alderman Dan Moriarty, who should be on the waiting list to speak, and he can actually talk to the particulars of the language, seeing how he was there, and he was the one, along with Fred T-Boone, to file the lawsuit to enforce the will of the people. So he was there. He could actually talk to the actual language better than I can. I am just the vehicle to bring it up for the people in Nashua, and I would hope that you would ask him the particular questions, if that's okay.
All right, thank you. Does the committee, Senator Perkins Spoka?
Yeah, thank you, Senator Avard. And you can tell me if this is a question about the particulars of the bill that I should defer to the alderman. But I was just wondering how widely you've been able to inquire to other municipalities that have tax caps, just to make sure that this language change isn't going to cause any, procedural issues with enforcement or anything.
Well, first of all, this is actually a spending cap, and it had to do with a 1993 referendum from the people. So I didn't reach out to any others, although in years past, when I was a city councilor in Franklin, I did vote for a tax cap, which was basically there again for the will of the people to control, if you will, if I can use the word, spendthrifts. We want to basically live within our means. We want the city to do well. We want things. We want a nice city. We want nice buildings, nice bridges, nice pipes in our feeding our water. However, there seems to be a consensus, a lot of people that I've been speaking with here in Nashua, that they just want this law to be enforced because they voted for it years ago. And just like anything else, if there's a way to get around the law, if those who are in authority and want to spend outside their means, the people feel as though they have no other way of speaking out. So this was one way for the people to have a voice again. And I want to applaud Alderman Moriarty for his efforts, and Fred T-Boone and those that supported this in the past. But I thought specifically for Nashua, this is language that would help and all those that may have a spending cap and those that or tax cap. This, when the people speak, they want their voices heard and they want it enforced. And so this is one way to reinforce what they've already put out there. So I don't know if that answers your question directly, but yes.
Follow up?
Follow-up, Chair. Thank you so much. Thank you, Senator. And I completely understand that this seems to be something that Nashua feels strongly, but I was just wondering if perhaps there were any other approaches you had explored, just so that we don't create any issues with tax or spending caps in other communities through this approach.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I'm pretty sure that this language will basically reinforce, if anything, other tax caps that are out there. But we can explore that, but I will depend upon the testimony of Alderman Moriarty to help us with some of these details. And I appreciate the question.
Thank you, Senator.
All right, any other questions from committee members? Just to your point, Senator Perkins-Coie, that Cornell Johnston is representing NHMA and will be testifying, so he may be able to help you further define your question. For everyone out there, I do have a timer. I don't like to use it, but we do have a bill at the end of this, which I think is going to take some amount of time. So I do want you to be respectful of the time that you use, not to repeating things, providing things by written testimony. And if people try to speak for a second time, they will be severely limited in the amount of time that they're given. So with that, we'll move on to the next person. I don't know whether it's Jessica or Marie or Tricia who's going to keep the list of people, but whoever.
Jessica, I will do
my
my best. So we have Dan Moriarty with his hands up, and Paula Johnson and Beth Scar.
Moriarty is fine.
Okay, let me bring in Dan Moriarty.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I have written testimony that I realized that I can submit, and I will do that. I am in support of Senate Bill 52, an act relative to the city charter provisions. The purpose of Senate Bill 52 is to rectify the current inconsistencies within RSA 49C33, the statute that sets the framework for cities to establish tax or spending caps. So RSA 49C33 is where it all happens. And the inconsistency specifically, there's two words. One word is override, and the other word is exclusion. And at the heart of the matter, to summarize everything, if you only remember one thing from everything I have to say, it's that when the Supreme Court reviewed this, they decided that the specific letter of the word override is not the same word as exclusion. Even though the intent of the legislature over several repairs tried to make that the case, there are laws on the books that are inconsistent with each other. This is not the first time this has happened. And ultimately, the fact that RSA 49C33 talks about an override and an exclusion, the Supreme Court said they're not the same thing. And that's what Senate Bill 52 aims to repair, is that inconsistency. I proceed. Historically, the mayor of the city of Nashua and the Board of Aldermen had met the intent of the spending cap, as in the city charter, for several administrations. There were occasional instances where it was necessary to override the spending cap, which was done via supermajority vote. So I'm saying that this has been on the books for a long time, and people were used to doing things a certain way, and it works. However, there are growing inconsistencies where the mayor and the Board of Aldermen have bypassed the intent of the spending cap via maneuvers that allowed spending in excess of the cap, only requiring a simple majority while still claiming to meet the letter of the spending cap. So there are two main problems that are resolved here in SB 52. One, the bill responds to the recommendations of the New Hampshire Supreme Court justices who wrote in 2018 relative to RSA 49C33 ID. So that's number one, which I already talked about. And two, the current inconsistencies in the text of RSA 49C33, specifically paragraph D, which sets the framework. Okay, so there's two things that are going on here in SB 52. The first thing is to respond directly to the Supreme Court and solve that issue with override versus exclusion. And the second thing is to repair loopholes that are made available. The spending cap is a single sentence in the city charter, and its override provision is a second sentence located immediately following the cap sentence. That's in Nashua. Leading up to 2017, the city of Nashua had met the intent of the spending cap for several mayoral administrations. Okay. In 2017, as a result of the mayor and the simple majority of the Board of Aldermen once again managed to devise an accounting maneuver to spend in excess of the spending cap. So in the interest of time, I'll move through this quickly, but that essentially, Senator Avard already mentioned that in 2017, there was a case where the mayor and the Board of Aldermen, I was on the Board of Aldermen at that time, figured out a way to bypass the spending cap using just a simple majority. Now, the people in Nashua have spoken. They voted as a referendum. They want a spending cap. And so the intent of the spending cap exists, but the problem is that there are instances where the mayor or the Board of Aldermen are able to figure out how to bypass the intent of the spending cap. So the Supreme Court ruled on this, and that ruling nullified actions of prior administrations along with the supermajority vote of those boards of aldermen, which override the spending cap via a clause well understood to be an override position. So what I'm saying there is that the mayor and the Board of Aldermen in Nashua in the past have already used this exclusion as a means of overriding the spending cap several times. Everybody understood that to be the case, but the Supreme Court said, aha, although you thought it was an override, it's actually not an override. And so that's why we're here today. In its 3-2 ruling in support of this holding, several opinions were written to explain the judgment. The problem lies with the current wording of RSA C32, C33 that refers to both an exclusion and override. So there we go again. I'm repeating myself, and that's good. The Supreme Court ruled 3-2. It was a split decision, but the common theme was that they all agreed that we need to fix this issue of exclusion versus override. So even though a city's tax cap or spending cap may intend to provide an override mechanism via the use of an exclusion, and even though the voters may have already supported this intention via passing a referendum and putting into law such a process, the judges decided this was not allowable because of vague or inconsistent wording. In addition, SB 52 paragraphs D3 and D4 rectify the conflicting language in the current version of the RSA. These inconsistencies were used by the mayor and Board of Aldermen in 2017 to bypass the spending cap. And so that's where it talks of if you read the bill itself, it mentions when there are, if in the cases where the mayor or the Board of Aldermen or the figure out a way to manipulate funds in order to exceed the spending cap, that shall be interpreted as a spending cap maneuver and shall be allowed only with a supermajority. So I offer my support of SB 52 based on my 6 years firsthand experience in the municipal legislation process. I've discussed, considered, and voted for or against 6 city budgets. I have led a court case on this topic. I have been influenced by the rule of law established. I recommend supporting SB 52. SB 52 will resolve misinterpretations and prevent manipulations. Final paragraph.
Mr. Moriarty?
Yes, sir.
We'll see if we can deal with anything that's in your final paragraph and the questions from the senators. Is there?
I yield.
From the senators. All right. Thank you, Mr. Moriarty. We'll go on. Jessica?
So next on the list is Timothy Twombly. Just let him, there he is. You should be good. You might have to unmute yourself.
Mr. Twombly? Oh, there you go.
Hello, did that do it?
Yes.
Hi, good morning, Senators. I'm Timothy Twombly from Nashua Ward 7. I'm speaking in favor of SB 52. At some time during my 6 years as a state rep, I voted in support of legislation relating to spending and tax caps. Testimony at that time stated that cities and towns with existing tax or spending caps would not be affected by the new legislation, and those existing caps would remain in force. However, the Supreme Court has ruled differently on this matter for Nashua. I support this legislation as it resolves the issue of vague or inconsistent wording and closes loopholes in the current law. Thank you.
Okay,
I hope I didn't repeat anything.
That's all right. Does the committee have any questions for Mr. Twombly? Seeing none, thank you very much. Jessica.
Next, we have Cornell Johnston. I'm just gonna, I can't. Trying to find him.
There he is.
Found him?
Yes.
Cordell.
There he is.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members, and thank you for letting me speak. Bill Johnston, representing the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and I'm speaking in opposition to the bill. I spent a lot of time reading the bill and trying to understand the language, and my main concern is that it's very hard to understand, and I think I finally understood it. And once I did, I think it creates some problems. So just briefly, what the current statute on tax caps in a city charter says is that a charter may contain a limit on spending increases that increase tax revenue. That tax cap must provide for an override by a supermajority of the governing body or the legislative body. And it may exclude revenue from dedicated or enterprise funds or other revenues from non-tax sources. So in the statute, clearly an override and an exclusion are two separate things. You can exclude certain things from the umbrella of the tax cap. At the same time, you have to have a provision that allows an override of the tax cap. As I understand it from the prior testimony, the goal of the bill is to make an override and an exclusion the same thing, but they're not. And what Senate Bill 50, I said 55, I think, Senate Bill 52, as I read it, says is that if the charter has an exclusion provision that requires a supermajority vote, that satisfies the statutory requirement for an override provision. And I don't see how that makes sense. I didn't look at Nashua's, but I looked at several tax charters that have tax cap provisions. I looked at Manchester, Dover, and Rochester, and I recognize that two of those cities are represented on this committee. So for example, Manchester's tax cap, basically it says budgeted tax revenues may not exceed last year's tax revenues plus an inflation factor. And that tax cap may be overridden by a 2/3 vote of the aldermen. It contains an exclusion for enterprise funds and bond payments. So those things are excluded from the tax cap. It also says that capital expenditures may be excluded by a 2/3 vote of the mayor and aldermen, or of the board of aldermen. So under Senate Bill 52, because there's a provision there that allows capital expenditures to be excluded by a 2/3 vote, as I read the bill, that would satisfy the statute's requirement that there be a supermajority override provision. So Manchester's charter has that override provision, but this bill is saying that it wouldn't have to have that override provision. It would allow removal of that override provision from the charter, and that I don't believe was ever the legislature's intent. Rochester's charter is similar. It allows capital expenditures and bond payments to be excluded by a 2/3 vote. So again, because there's an exclusion with a supermajority requirement, this bill says that could satisfy the statute's requirement to have an override provision. And again, as I say, I don't think that was ever the legislature's intent. Looking at paragraph 2 in the bill, it says when an exclusion is enacted for the purpose of or has the effect of redistributing budget items from within the tax cap to outside the tax cap, et cetera, it shall require the same supermajority vote as an override threshold. This is talking about when it says an exclusion is enacted, that would be done by charter amendment, which is done by a vote of the voters. And this says it shall require the same supermajority vote as an override threshold. The supermajority vote is by the Board of Aldermen or by the City Council. So I don't follow that. It's saying that the vote of the voters would require the same supermajority as the vote of the alderman or the council.
Cordell?
Yep.
Just passing 5 minutes, so I want to get questions from the senators.
Yep, I will. That's all I'll say. Other than I would suggest, especially Senator Gray and Senator Susie, if you talk to your local officials and see how this would affect your tax caps.
Okay, questions from the senators on the committee. Senator Susie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry I missed some of the earlier testimony, but I wanted to ask Attorney Johnson, beginning on line 20, the section about when accounting practices change the organization of a budget. In the instance where the city, for example, City of Manchester has an audit and it is found not to be in compliance with certain IRS provisions. So IRS provisions, federal law would require essentially redistributing budget lines in order to comply with federal law. Would that compliance then require a supermajority in order to comply with law? And the advice given the language in this legislation in that section?
That's what it seems to say. And that's another thing that I have trouble following about the bill. I don't see how that can work.
Thank you. Appreciate your answer.
Additional questions from committee members? All right, thank you very much. Jessica?
So next we have Beth Scare. Should be able to talk. Beth?
Yes, yep. I got the unmute signal. Hi, I'm Beth Scare from Nashua. Everyone else had a lot of legalese to discuss, and I'm here to represent the human component of this bill. I'm calling in to ask you to vote OTP on HB 52 to protect the spending caps for New Hampshire cities and towns, most especially my city of Nashua. Nashua's been struggling with a very spend-happy board of aldermen and mayor. They have very little fiscal restraint, and having our spending cap back in place would put a check on them. I have neighbors that are struggling to pay their property tax. Our neighbors across the street are elderly and living on Social Security and having a very difficult time paying their bills. My neighbor a couple houses down died a few days ago from lung cancer. He was the breadwinner for the family and left only a modest life insurance policy, which won't last long with the sharply increasing property taxes that we're predicted to have because of the heavy spending by our city elected officials. Also here in my ward, there are many struggling families with children. They're paying very high rents right here by the Massachusetts border. And with the property taxes shooting up, those rents will only shoot up alongside it. We're already predicted to have a 5.5% increase in property taxes because the city lost a bunch of state aid because the Nashua School District never opened this year and hundreds of students left, many of which we have no idea how many will be coming back. But we've already lost the state aid for this year. The city is absolutely going to be struggling with crippling property tax increases. We need the spending cap. This is critical. Think of the human cost, please. Please vote OTP on SB 52. Nashuans deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there questions from committee members? All right, seeing none, thank you. Jessica?
We have Paula Johnson.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Paula Johnson. I'm a former state representative. I'm a former member of the Board of Aldermen, and I was on the board for many years, for 4 years, back in 2002 to 2005. I was one of the original people that helped get the spending cap passed because of outrageous spending in the city of Nashua after back then Mayor Donchis was mayor. I think the important thing that we need to understand was that the people overwhelmingly, several times when this spending cap was on the ballot, voted for it. It is the will of the people that feel that we need to have this back. It worked beautifully. Now, one of the provisions, and as an alderman, I helped enforce 56D, exemption to budget limitation. The total or part of the principal and interest payments of municipal bonds, whether established for school or municipal purposes, may be exempted from the limitation defined in paragraph 56C upon affirmative vote of at least 10 aldermen. I helped get that through by referendum. So we clarified things more out there when we were voting. I think that everybody who spoke in favor of this, and I am wholeheartedly in favor of this, we are reaching a turning point in New Hampshire and other states where we have been shut down because of a pandemic. We are going to be looking for revenue, but the people have no more revenue to give in our taxes anymore. And this spending cap worked beautifully for years. It is a spending cap, not a tax cap within the municipal association. Everybody keeps confusing the difference between spending and tax caps. This has to do with how much spending we can do within, and it used to be the CPI index, and then it went to the vote of the people, and they changed it to the, give me a second here, I apologize. It has to do with the gross national product, I believe it is, how that is. So they changed it, and the will of the people said, okay, we'll change it, we'll give a little bit more leeway, that if we'll go by a different index, because Social Security is by CPI, and that's how it always was by CPI. But now, the money isn't there. People are just trying to get back on their feet, so we're gonna have runaway spending. Like I said, this worked, it worked well, and now the courts made a decision. All we're asking is that the legislature please fix the language in it, so we the people, again, we the people, can have our rights back, have a spending cap to protect us from 5.5% increase this year. We had 3.5 last year. We're not gonna get the money from the state. Again, kids left the system. We're gonna get maybe 10% increase. We can't afford it. You're gonna see people trying to sell their homes and leave New Hampshire. Remember, it is live free or die in New Hampshire. Let's bring back the will of the people. And thank you very much for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you. Do the committee members have questions? Seeing none, thank you. Jessica?
Next, we have Honorable Bill Ohm. There you go.
Yes, thank you, members of the committee, and I appreciate your patience with my fellow colleagues who live in Nashua. I've lived in Nashua 16 years, and I've benefited greatly from the spending cap that was in place and honored by the mayor and aldermen at the time. And now, in desperation for more funds, they've chosen to use accounting gimmicks to try to use a majority to add additional spending rather than going to a supermajority. So I've got nothing more to add than the great testimony of my fellow residents, and I hope you would support the bill as introduced by Senator Avard. Thank you.
Thank you. Do committee members have any questions? All right, seeing none, thank you. Jessica?
Next, we have Amanda Reichert.
Hi, good morning. I'm Amanda Reichert. I am a 10.5-year resident of Nashua. I'm also a business owner. I sell real estate across the state. And I can tell you that the property taxes that people are having to pay are crippling their budgets. I, as just a person, do not have the ability to just go and take more and more and more money. I have to budget my finances, especially being self-employed. And I think that the city should have to budget and live within the means of what they have to work with. Rising property taxes by default means that that the city has more money to work with, and to add increases on top of that, it's just really unfair. It's making it impossible for people to be able to afford to continue to live in Nashua. In addition, I see people who literally are considered middle-class people who are considered low income because they cannot even rent in what's called a market valued rental complex. For a 2-bedroom apartment, if people are having to spend $23 for a livable living condition, it just isn't right. And taxes going up is a major contributor of that. So I am in support of the caps that Senator Avard has proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing none. Jessica?
So I don't have anybody else on the list, and I don't have anybody that's raised their hands, Senator.
All right, we'll give them a couple of seconds here to find the raise your hand button.
I see Dan Moriarty has raised his hand again.
Dan, I do put a very severe limit on this. You've got less than a minute. Go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, let's do this in 30 seconds or less. It's important. One of the previous speakers read through it and said he had a hard time following and understanding the case. It is indeed important that that we make this so that it's readable, but I firmly believe that as is, it still holds. So specifically with Manchester, the fact that this allows the bonding exclusion to be considered as an override is fine, because it still has an override. Whether there's one override or two override, it's still a valid law. So this does not cause any problems with Manchester. And with regards to towns that have a town vote, this whole section doesn't even apply anyway. So this would not exclude the town from having a town vote to spend as much as they want. So because if you go back to the original RSA 49C33, it's specific to cities with charters with spending caps. Thank you.
All right. If you have anything else, please include it in written testimony and submit it. I don't see any more hands. Do you? All right. Does the committee have any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on SB 52 and give everybody a couple of minutes to reset. I want to close some files and open the new ones, so I may be as slow as everyone else here. All right. Is everyone ready?
Yes. I am.
Yes.
Prime sponsor is,
Senator Waters.
oh, Senator Waters.
Mhm.
Welcome, Senator Waters. You may introduce your bill.
Just need to unmute Senator Waters. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Senator David Waters, District 4, comprised of Barrington, Dover, Rollinsford, and Somersworth, and I am here to introduce Senate Bill 53. This is enabling legislation that will authorize municipalities to create a program funded by a surcharge on the city side of the property tax to support preservation, open space, recreation, community housing, renewable energy, and mitigation of environmental challenges. I bring forward the bill to help municipalities address
space, recreation, community housing.
Sorry, my phone was, was repeating everything. So excuse me there for that distraction. The bill is meant to address many of the difficulties municipalities have had in meeting the needs in these areas. We do have LCHIP program, of course, for some preservation funding. There's a greater demand for open space, recreation space, but particularly we've all heard a great deal about difficulties in providing affordable housing and also renewable energy projects, and as well, many communities that are dealing with the effects of increased rainfall and sea level rise and culvert replacement roads, you name it, what needs to be done and is foreseen in the future there that needs to be done. It's also brought forward because there are very successful programs which have a lot of community buy-in that have components of this in various other states. And so I thought it would be useful to bring this forward. You'll see that what the bill does is it sets up, because it's enabling legislation, it sets up a lot of definitions as to what would qualify as expenditures under each of those categories and how they would be done. And then it would require the vote of the governing body and then the setup of a committee you can see comprised here that would then bring forward proposals to the governing body for the use of this funding on various projects. And then again, the governing body would have to vote to approve them. There are also mechanisms here because some projects such as land acquisition or affordable housing might extend over several years. There are some funding mechanisms here so that funds can be invested in certain ways, whether setting up a local fund is, they might, municipality might have to save money to buy a fire engine or something else, or that they could put those into the state run account for the municipalities have access to. So I just wanted to describe it, you have the bill, and I just wanted to describe it rather briefly because I've had a lot of conversation with the preservation community and with the municipalities who are greatly interested in this legislation. And the message has been is that this could be something very important for New Hampshire that, as in other states, might be well embraced, but that right now, given COVID, it's difficult for them to have the kinds of meetings and public hearings and so on to build support and understanding of the bill. And of course, as well, with the budgets under such pressure at this point, it does seem that it's going to be difficult to have a conversation about, future needs when the immediate needs are so difficult. So it's for that reason, and I did message the chairman that it really would make sense, I think, if I requested the committee to retain the bill in the hopes that the committee would look favorably on it in the process of review of it and recommend it for reintroduction next year. I'm very happy to take any questions on the content here because it is an opportunity to familiarize people with this kind of work that is being done in other states and what it could do for New Hampshire.
And so, and I'll be glad to take any questions. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You are muted, Senator Gray.
Okay, we'll try that again. Are there questions from the committee members?
I did have.
Senator Ward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Senator Waters, I just took a quick look at it and it says here on, I think, page 3, is this going to be something that is going to be required across these municipalities of New Hampshire? Or are we talking about municipalities may adopt this?
This is entirely enabling. Thank you for your question, Senator. This is entirely enabling. It's a completely voluntary program, and it would take a full vote of it would take a vote of the governing body after public hearings and so on to adopt it. And then within the program itself, there's a lot of flexibility. As we do with a lot of municipal programs, there are provisions here for exemptions of commercial properties, exemptions of anybody, any first $100,000 in a property, and exemptions based on income limits by residents. So it provides all that kind of flexibility if a municipality decided to do it, but it is fully enabling.
Thank you.
Additional questions from committee members? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Is there anyone else on the list?
I don't have anybody in the list and I don't see any hands raised.
Are there
Cornell
any-
Johnston just raised his hand.
Okay.
Oh,
Hi, this is Jennifer Goodman. You didn't call on me, but I was just offered to unmute. Should I proceed or wait?
You might as well proceed since you're here.
Thank you very much. I'm Jennifer Goodman. I'm the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance. Just wanted to say a minute's worth and thank Senator Waters for his leadership on this. I know other members of this committee and our co-sponsors and others. The New Hampshire Preservation Alliance is the statewide historic preservation nonprofit. Help about 100 community projects a year and many other property owners. We've worked with some of you and other legislators to kind of fill the toolbox of preservation, community development kind of tools over the years. A lot of them enabling legislation, and we've also been on the ground to help communities adopt it when it feels like a good fit. Just wanted to echo what Senator Waters said. There's certainly a need and an opportunity relative to this kind of investment that's connected to this concept that he's sharing with you through this bill. And I think you all know there's the need, but also the opportunity. This kind of work creates the communities that residents want to live in, that attract businesses and visitors. Labor-intensive nature of preservation is great for supporting good paying jobs. I know at the Preservation Alliance, we really appreciate the interconnected vision associated with this concept, that it's about resiliency, housing, preservation, conservation, and redevelopment, that it connects the dots in those really important ways. I'd put neutral when I did sign in, but I guess I put neutral because I understood that Senator Waters was going to ask you for this retaining and reintroduction. We fully support the retaining and reintroduction and really look forward to working with Senator Waters and others. We've got great connections across the country to other states that have proposals similar to this, as Senator Waters described, and we'll certainly tap those as well as work with him and others really to make this as strong a case as possible and bring it back to you in the months ahead. So just wanted to offer those comments. Thank you very much.
All right, does the committee have any questions? Seeing none, I guess we have Mr. Johnston on. Okay, Cordell.
Good morning. Thank you. I think I signed up just a little too late to get on your list this morning. But Cornell Johnston for the New Hampshire Municipal Association. And I just want to support Senator Waters' request that the bill be retained, or I think you say re-referred in the Senate. It's an ambitious and complicated bill, so I think it would be good to have some time to work on it. And just one clarification, I think Senator Waters said that it would require, it is clearly entirely enabling, voluntary by the municipality. I think he said it would require adoption by the governing body. As I read it, it actually would require adoption by the legislative body. So that would be in a town, that would be a town meeting vote. So it definitely would be something that the voters themselves would have to approve. And with that, as I say, I'll just support the suggestion that it be retained for next year. Thank you.
All right. Got questions from the committee? Seeing none. Would you have any other hands?
I don't see
no extra hands. I'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 53 and give everybody a minute to get ready for the next bill. Bill 80. I'm almost there and opening the files. All right, I've got my files open now. Is everyone else ready? Okay, and the prime sponsor, Jessica, is he?
That is Senator Sherman. There he is.
Senator Sherman, welcome. You're still muted though.
Chair, Senator Sherman did communicate to me that he's having just a little bit of internet trouble, so maybe just give him a moment.
We certainly will.
Thank you, sir.
Just to caution people, the sign-up sheet is the longest one that I've had up till now. I haven't looked at how many are actually signed up to speak, but that often grows during the hearing that people request by raising their hand. We want to certainly keep that to a minimum and encourage written testimony, which they can send to the committee staff, and we will all get it. And I think I've vamped as much as I can, Senator Sherman. All right.
Oh. He's gone now.
All right, Senator Susie, you were also a co-sponsor on this. I'll let you at least do the start of the introduction, and then if Senator Sherman comes back on, we will have him take over whenever you and he want to do the handoff.
Sure. I'm happy to just start it off quickly. This bill may look familiar to the members of the committee that were here last session. This bill had bipartisan support. I think it's an important initiative to allow involvement and transparency in our redistricting process. As we know, the Constitution requires that redistricting ultimately occurs a piece of legislation, but the build up to that is truly important, and the expertise that can be brought to this process and the transparency, I think, is critically important. So I know Senator Sherman had a lot more to say, and I hope he's able to get back on as soon as possible, but would certainly encourage all of you to support this legislation. As I said, it had been supported by bipartisan legislators in the past.
It looks like Senator Sherman is back, so.
Okay.
No.
Senator Sherman, we had Senator Susie do the quick introduction to this, and so now the time is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Timing is everything, right? So the minute you called on me, I lost my internet. So thank you for your patience. As many of you know, for the record, Senator Tom Sherman, District 24, 11 towns on the Seacoast. And as many of you know, I was vice chair of election law last year and the last 2 years, and also served on the select committee appointed by the Secretary of State to look at how we keep our elections safe during COVID. And it crossed my mind that it's interesting that we put so much focus on the security and safety of our elections. I mean, I think we had 6 weeks of testimony and work. We generated a report that was at least 20 pages long. We ended up with an omnibus bill, worked very closely with Senator Gray on that, and also Senator Birdsall to make sure it was bipartisan. And I think the general and primary elections show just how well that process worked. Well, imagine if you take all of that work to have a secure and safe election and your vote doesn't count. If you look at, for example, Executive Council District 2, that is a Rorschach test of Executive Council redistricting. And it's clear why it was done that way. It's clear why Senate District 23 is at least a +4 Republican district. And in fact, this past week, the chair of the New Hampshire Republican Party announced that plans are already underway for partisan gerrymandering to favor the Republican Party. And I'll quote, "Because of this, we control redistricting," he said. "I can stand here today and guarantee you that we will send a conservative Republican to Washington, D.C. as a congressperson in 2022. Nowhere in that is what do the voters want? Nowhere. Redistricting was not designed to keep a party in power for 10 years. And redistricting was designed to make sure that our districts reflected the change in the demographics of our state. And it is our constitutional duty as legislators to make sure that is done with honesty, integrity, and transparency. So some people might say, well, this is just sour grapes because the Democrats lost the majority. Well, if that were the case, we wouldn't have had at least 4 bills while we've been in the minority or in the majority over the last 10 years to try to make sure that redistricting was independent. And this bill, which I completely credit Margie Smith with, but not just Margie Smith, I credit Senator Birdsall, I credit Senator Gray, because this bill is the product of bipartisan work. It passed both chambers of the House and Senate, and unfortunately was vetoed. The reason why it's so critical is that in a time when we are absolutely having our very democracy questioned and the integrity of our elections questioned, it is our most sacred task to make sure that voters' votes count. If you're a Republican in Portsmouth or a Democrat in Salem, your vote really doesn't count. This isn't a partisan bill. This is a bipartisan bill. Now, there were questions about earlier efforts. You know, what about the constitutionality? This bill is absolutely dependent, as most of you know, it's absolutely dependent on the legislature's actions. The legislature gets to pick the commissioners for the most part. The legislature doesn't have to accept the advice of this council. They can go do what they want. That's how it became constitutional. I remember our current Senate council, 2 years ago when we were first looking at this, raising the constitutionality, and in response to that, this bill was brought forward. So what we're bringing forward in SB 80, what I'm bringing forward is a bipartisan, or even better, a nonpartisan, independent, transparent redistricting process that makes sure that while we have incredibly safe and secure elections in New Hampshire, that actually the fact that you want to vote and that you can vote safely and securely is probably pales next to the need to make sure that vote actually means something. And that's what this bill does. I urge your bipartisan support, which has been there before for this very same bill. And I urge all of us to vote ought to pass out of committee and on the floor of the Senate. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Does the committee have any questions? Senator Perkins Coker.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator, for presenting this important bill. I just wanted to clarify, as it is under existing law, is there any requirement, for the public to have a say in how the legislative maps are drawn for the meetings to be held in public or anything similar?
No, I don't have the constitutional wording right in front of me, so I apologize for that. But I believe the Constitution does ask for this to be an open process, but there is no specific that I know of in statute that it requires it to be transparent. And if that were the case, then the fact that 10 years ago it was not transparent would be a violation.
Follow up, Senator Coker.
Follow up, Chair. Thank you so much. Okay, so in your view, Senator, what this bill does is it asks the legislature to convene a committee composed of people that are independent of this process. And in addition, it creates some important transparencies around that commission's meetings and allows for some public involvement to ensure it's a robust and fair process.
Correct. And I would also add that your bill, SB 90, takes that one step further and guarantees that the public will have access to the process and that it will be transparent. There, really, there's nothing more important to democracy than having how our votes count made available to the public. I just can't see any argument for anything less than that. It doesn't matter who's got the majority. It should be made public. It's the public's right to know. And especially in the live free or die state, if you live free but your districts are gerrymandered and determined behind closed door, that's not free. So I would think that the most conservative among us would want to be sure that the voters' rights are protected and that they are aware of the process and can participate in it, which this allows.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Senator.
I would like to ask a clarifying question of Senator Sherman. On any bill that is heard here in the Senate, is it not practice that the committee would meet in open session and the public would be available to attend those? And the only thing they would not normally be allowed to attend would be any caucuses that were held on a bill or any other matter that the Senate takes up.
Senator and Chairman, I would certainly hope that's the practice, but that certainly is the way we're supposed to work.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for the senator? Okay, do we have any other sitting senators or House members on the bill? If not, I would like to go down and get former Senator Like.
We have Representative Marjorie Smith And Senator Khan is also signed up. However, he has texted me and told me he won't be able to make it to speak. So
All right, we'll take these
Perfect.
sitting legislators and then go down to get former Senator Levite.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. It is a delight to see you again. I've missed working with you the last year or so. I'm Marjorie Smith. I represent the 6th district in Stratford County, which is Durham and Madbury. And I'm here once again to thank those of you who have been on this committee and have worked so hard to try to end up with the best possible bill. You know, 4 out of 5 New Hampshire's voters enthusiastically support efforts to end gerrymandering in New Hampshire. In reality, we are here today with the hope that at the end of a responsible, inclusive legislative process, we will be successful in convincing one particular voter. Only one is the person we're worried about, because the House and Senate again and again have supported the concept and supported this bill in term to establish an independent redistricting commission. Part the 1st, Article 11 of the New Hampshire Constitution, which each of us has taken an oath to protect and defend, states all elections are to be free, and every inhabitant of the state of 18 years and upwards shall have an equal right to vote. How can an election be free and equal if district lines are specifically and systematically designing election districts for partisan purposes and a desire to preserve power? I ask you, how can an election be fair and equal unless every voter has an opportunity to translate their votes into representation? A system in which elected officials get to choose which voters will get the chance to vote for them is backwards. This bill learns from the states that have gone before and has benefited from responsible, cooperative work of the election law committees in both bodies. It demonstrates the principles of independence, balance, compromise, community-based decision-making. This is not about Republican or Democratic or liberal and conservative. It is not about left and right. It is about right and wrong. But don't take my word for it. We've been drawing lines for political reasons all the way back to 1812. But I think it's wrong. I think it leads to bad government. That was the statement of former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. Quote, "To me, the biggest problem we have is in a gerrymandered environment. We need to eliminate gerrymandering. We've got to figure out a way to do it." End of quote. Ohio Governor John Kasich. Quote, "That's all we're asking for, an end to anti-democratic and un-American practice of gerrymandering congressional districts. The fact is, gerrymandering has become a national scandal." End of quote. President Ronald Reagan. The most significant change from the bill we started with several years ago, if your memory can go back that far, Senator Gray and Senator Birdsall, has to do with the selection of commissioners. As you supported last term, we ended up with a plan that involves the Speaker and the House Minority Leader, the President of the Senate, and the Senate Minority Leader, who select most but not all of the commissioners. There are a number of specific benefits of this approach. The most important one to highlight is that it clearly lays responsibility for a major portion of the appointment process to the legislature, which emphasizes the role of the legislature at the start and at the finish of the redistricting process. As a result, it also lessens significantly the role of the Secretary of State. And while we hope we will never get to that, we clarified the role of the Supreme Court if, regrettably, the legislature cannot fulfill its obligations to the people of the state in a timely manner. As you will well remember, the Supreme Court was involved in the 2000 and the 2010 redistricting efforts. Let's not put a value on it, on the redistricting plan that the legislature had come up with. And it was the Supreme Court that ended up creating a number of districts that should not have been decided by the Supreme Court. We often say it's not about the money, but often it is. In this biennium, when we're facing a number of challenges, as an old finance committee member, I must note that the experience in New Hampshire and other states is consistent and conclusive. The cost of drawing district lines is minimal. The significant costs are incurred when the work of the state is challenged in court and the state loses. The resulting costs to the state were significant. An independent redistricting system minimizes the possibility of having to go to the courts, and it strengthens the role, as it should, of the legislature in determining fair and equitable districts. I thank you very much for your courtesy in permitting me to testify, and I hope that yet again, this committee will vote to support independent redistricting. I also want to make one other comment, and that is that yesterday, the United States Bureau of the Census announced that because of difficulties that they had that had occurred in collecting data for the 2020 census, they will not have the figures we need ready for publication until July of 2021. And I think that's also important to keep in mind in terms of how we will go about the business of drawing district lines. Again, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and it is a pleasure to see you.
Thank you. Are there questions from committee members? Okay, I do have a request of the Honorable Marjorie Smith is to give us some input on why in House Bill 706 that did pass and was vetoed by the governor, that page 4, the review by the legislature is not included in your current bill, and the wording about it being sent back to the commission and then the ultimate decision made by the legislature. So if you'd give us a little write-up on that or something, I would appreciate that.
Thank you. Senator Gray, there are two different bills going through. This bill that Senator Shuren brought before you is the bill that tried to incorporate every question that had been raised by the governor when he vetoed the first of our efforts. The governor then vetoed the second of our efforts. And we have this bill going in the Senate and which is the latest version. The version in the House that is going through is the previous version. and with the hope and expectation that yet again, the House and the Senate will come together to have the best possible bill. But I will clarify subsequent to this from you or your staff exactly what you want from me now, and I will provide that in the next day or so. Thank you.
Okay. My point, and again, I'll let you respond. My point was that part of the constitutionality of the prior bill was that back and forth between the legislature and clarifying that the legislature has the final say. And that is what I would like you to either clarify or send us a letter, you know, with some documentation in that. Certainly, I don't want to try and pass a bill that is dependent upon another's bill's passing to make it constitutional. So if you want to respond, that's fine. If you'd like to respond by letter, I would prefer that, but that's.
I will respond by letter. Thank you very much, Senator.
All right. Are there any other questions from committee members? Okay, seeing none. And are there any other legislators that are on the list?
I don't see any.
All right, if you'd call Senator. Senator Perkins Coker, you had a question?
Sir, I'd like to make a short statement in support of the bill.
Sure.
Okay, I'm gonna step down from my committee role for a minute. Honorable committee members and chairs, for the record, I'm Senator Perkins Coker representing District 21, and I just wanted to testify today in support of Senate Bill 80, you know, at a time where I think more than ever, all of us are feeling, you know, a commitment to our democracy and a need to protect our civic institutions. I know that this is an issue that matters, as many before me have testified, not just to one party or the other, but to so many of our voters across the state. I know that so many of us here today, and especially my fellow committee members, are very committed to upholding these institutions that represent our democracy. And you wouldn't be here today if you were not. So I'd encourage you to support this effort this year, as you have in the past, as others have noted. You know, we're living at a time where, as civil servants, you know, we have some anxiety about returning to our own state house, the people's house, you know, where we've seen violence against some of our elected officials. And I think it's just time that each of us really take any responsibility we can to continue to restore our faith in our democracy and for our voters, and make sure that we're doing absolutely everything we can to make them feel that this is the most fair process that there possibly can be. So again, I know you've supported this in the past, and I probably don't need to convince you of the merits of it, but I do hope that this year, in particular, you know, you'll be supportive of this bill and this effort, and hopefully we can resolve the language concerns that Chairman Gray just raised to his satisfaction. But, you know, New Hampshire takes politics and civic democracy too seriously to let this process be anything other than the most robust and fair that it can. So thank you very much.
The committee members have any questions? Okay, thank you. None. Jessica.
I can bring in Senator LeVake.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Election Law Committee. It's good to see you. My name is Melanie LeVake, former state senator and former chair of election law. I reside in Brookline, New Hampshire. I am here this morning to speak in support of Senate Bill 80, a bill to form an independent redistricting advisory commission that will advise the legislature on drawing the legislative districts in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a state that experiences extreme fluctuations in our government, moving from Republican to Democratic majorities like a swinging pendulum. Laws are put in place, and the following session they are repealed. When our legislators cannot work together towards compromise, we have a government that does not work for the people. Eric Holder, former Attorney General for President Obama, described the scenario where the extremes from both sides compete for legislative seats. If a legislator votes with the opposite party, for example, to pass a budget, they are primaried out for someone who is more extreme. We have seen this many times in New Hampshire and across the country. where we have lost good legislators who lose their seat due to working with the opposite party. The end result, again, is that our citizens don't see a government that works and one that is broken. How does this help our citizens, and how does this help our democracy? According to Common Cause, when legislators draw districts regardless of the party, there may be a temptation or even a purposeful decision to draw districts that give them an unfair advantage. In states where politicians are in charge of redistricting, 36% of the maps are struck down as illegal or drawn by courts due to a failure to approve the districts. Districts' maps are often drawn in secret by incumbents and the party in power. Even President Reagan was against gerrymandering, saying, "We're asking for an end to anti-democratic and un-American practice of gerrymandering congressional districts." An independent commission consists of Democrats, Republicans, and undeclared citizens. It removes the temptation to gerrymander districts and forces each party to listen, advocate, and work together to do what is best for the voters, not what is best for the politicians. 21 states have some version of an independent redistricting commission. New Hampshire has proposed commissions twice last year, and each time they were vetoed by the governor. When the governor said the legislature is shirking their responsibility, amendments were made for an advisory commission. This year, there are 2 bills and a constitutional amendment being proposed. Mr. Chair, members of the Election Law Committee, this bill is advocating for transparency, integrity, and fairness when drawing those district maps. I urge you to keep in mind the reasons we serve and who we serve. I urge you to pass Senate Bill 80 to allow New Hampshire to have fair districts and fair representation. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and committee members.
Thank you, Senator. The questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you. Jessica?
Next on the list is Bob Perry.
Good morning, members of Senate Election Law. My name is Bob Perry. I live in the town of Stratford. On January 18, 2017, I spoke in the House in support of HB 203. On May 1, 2019, I spoke here on HB 706. On June 25, 2020, I spoke here in support of HB 1665. All of these presentations are the forerunner to what I support today, SB 80. At all of these appearances, I was speaking in support of fair maps, not knowing which party would be responsible for creating them in 2021. Executive Council District 2 is clearly gerrymandered by its shape alone. It includes the very Democratic-leaning municipalities to the east of the state, travels westward in a thin block of adjacent towns, acting as a pathway to connect with a heavy block of Democrat-leaning municipalities in the 2nd Congressional District. This district was packed in the last redistricting in order to allow for the majority to create districts elsewhere to its advantage, in effect, asking unwitting Republican voters to sacrifice the worth of their votes without even asking them. Indeed, the only Democrat seated on the 5-member Executive Council by way of the November election is from gerrymandered District 2. All of which I understand is legal, but it shouldn't be. In a substantial departure from US Supreme Court rulings beginning in 1962, when it held that the federal courts had jurisdiction to consider constitutional challenges to states' legislative redistricting plans, including cases involving creation of partisan maps. Most recently, the High Court refused to make it illegal, leaving it to the states to decide if the majority party's devaluation of a voter's political influence continues. By establishing a Republican majority in the last election, I am confident blocks of Republican voters did not intend that the influence of their votes be diminished. Yet, if the result of the last redistricting is an indication of what is to be in this cycle, and even with no changes at all, blocks of Republican voters will be negatively impacted. I urge that the interest of all voters be prime, taking into consideration the 2006 amendment to the New Hampshire Constitution, which established that towns with requisite population get their own state representative, considered in the usual legislative process, and that maps in the public interest be adopted. Thank you.
Do the committee members have any questions from the Honorable Mr. Perry? Seeing none, thank you. Jessica.
I have Liz Tentarelli.
Ms. Tentarelli. That wasn't me.
Ms. Tentarelli, your sound is off or not working.
All right, Ms. Tentarelli, we're going to skip you right now and we'll come back to you. Jessica?
Oh, Jessica, you're muted.
Sorry. I have on the list Jay Newton, but I don't see them in the room. So Jay, if you're out there, can you just raise your hand so I can find you?
I believe he submitted testimony, Jessica. I don't think he's going to speak.
Not going to speak. Okay, then I don't have anybody on my list.
Okay, we'll try Ms. Tentarelli again if she's still on the list.
She
and the others who were out there listening, would we at the point where we raised hands?
Okay. Sorry, I was going to try her again, but I think it's not working still. Ms. Tentarelli, your sound is coming out not understandable.
Okay, if one of the staff members could call her on the phone number that she's got listed and see if we can't make alternate arrangements with her, I would appreciate that.
I will do that.
Okay. Do we have any hands raised?
We do. I have Open Democracy Action.
Okay, I imagine that's Ms. Zink. Am I correct?
Yes, you are correct.
All righty, you have.
Good morning, chairs and members of the Election Law Committee. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. For the record, my name is Olivia Zink, Executive Director of Open Democracy Action. We're a nonpartisan, nonprofit, pro-voter organization with 35,000 members. Our mission is to fix democracy, specifically campaign finance, redistricting, and honest elections for New Hampshire. I wanted to thank you for your prior work that this committee has done and will do to create a fair process for redistricting. I'm here to speak in support of Senate Bill 80. Voters need to pick politicians. Politicians should not be picking voters. Senator Sherman already quoted the New Hampshire GOP this weekend, but so I won't repeat the quote, but I do want to say that party leaders should not be guaranteeing seats in Congress. I believe that this is your job as legislators. I think you should not be accountable to party leadership. The legislature should be accountable to voters. And Daniel Webster's said, the people's government is made for the people, made by the people, and it's answerable to the people. I will add that because these bills in prior sessions have been retained bills, 10 years ago, the public was given 24 hours notice to comment on the maps that were drawn. Partisan gerrymandered, perpetuated by bad actors of any party is bad for towns. They may not get somebody who advocates for their interest. It's bad for voters because they feel that their vote doesn't matter in a rigged district. And it's bad for our state because people lose faith and in the honesty in our government. Former Representative Bob Perry already spoke about Executive District 2, but in my written testimony, there's a little bit more there, but I don't need to repeat something you've already heard. Senate Bill 80, an independent advisory redistricting commission, would be bipartisan. It would make its recommendation to the House and the Senate. It's constitutional. It will ensure an independent, transparent, and ensure that all communities are represented fairly. Fair maps and independent redistricting is a two-way conversation between voters and their elected officials. New Hampshire has a proud tradition of civic participation, and this will continue to allow voters' voices to be part of the process. In recent cycles, we have had a distorted and partisan maps. I really urge this committee, ahead of the data from the census, to really work collectively to ensure that the voter's voice is there. We have fairness and honesty in the process. And for that, I urge you to ought to pass. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Do committee members have any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Shall we try Ms. Tentarelli again, or?
I haven't heard, Tricia was gonna call.
I did not have a number. I did email her, so.
All right, if
Anybody
there's
has
anyone
the-
else with their hands raised?
Yeah,
take
we
them.
have Louise Spencer.
Ms. Spencer.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for taking my testimony today. It's good to see everybody here at work again. Thank you so much for working under what are, I know, difficult conditions with the COVID virus. Really appreciate it. So my name is Louise Spencer. I'm from Concord, New Hampshire. I am the co-founder of the Kent Street Coalition, which is an all-volunteer grassroots advocacy organization. But today I am here representing and speaking for myself. Like many of you, I have my own political leanings, and I'm not afraid to fight as hard as I can for the things that I believe in. But I do believe in a fair fight. And I believe that competition usually brings us closer to compromise and the best path forward. That's why I am here today, asking you to support SB 80, creating an independent redistricting commission. It is the best path toward fairness. If, like me, you have gone out door to door knocking, you've heard it too many times, over and over again. Voting doesn't matter. No one cares what I think. I'm just going to stay home. We hear cries to throw the bums out, drain the swamp, enact term limits now. These cries all express the frustration of people who don't think their vote matters. And too often, they are right. Their vote doesn't count. The election is already determined before a single vote is cast, or determined by a primary where the winning candidate of one party is all but guaranteed to win in the general election. In the US House, only about 60 seats are considered competitive. The others have been drawn to favor incumbents of one party or the other. That means that in 86% of US House districts, the results have already been decided by the time the November election rolls around. And in many, many instances, gerrymandering is the culprit. This is a problem of both parties. The lure of power is just too tempting. Elections are supposed to be a check on that temptation, not an endorsement of it. Maps are drawn up to protect parties, protect incumbents, to protect special interests, to protect everyone but the voter. And as we've heard here today, several people have quoted Ronald Reagan, who called gerrymandering, who said that gerrymandering has become a national scandal. Indeed. Let's not make it a New Hampshire scandal. Let's ensure transparency, fair play, and the robust exchange of ideas. The best way to do that is to have fairness and transparency in the redistricting process. And I urge you all to vote to enact SB 80. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do committee members have any questions? Seeing none. Jessica.
Thank you very much.
I see Liz Tentarelli on the list again. Should we try?
We should. We should.
All right.
Liz, I think you're muted right now.
I'm trying to unmute myself. Is it working?
Yes, it's working.
Thank you. I apologize for that. I logged off and logged on, and here we are. So thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the League of Women Voters of New Hampshire. We're a nonpartisan organization. We've been advocating for fair redistricting here in New Hampshire since 2004. I have sent you detailed testimony, written testimony, which I also posted on the League of Women Voters New Hampshire's webpage, that details the process in 2011. It cites newspaper articles of the time. It includes the Supreme Court ruling that show the lack of transparency and the frustration the public felt in 2011 at that process. And the bill you're looking at today on page 1, on page 2, lines 8 to 11, calls for an open and transparent process to draw this redistricting according to criteria and to conduct its business with integrity and fairness. And I've gotten to know many of you over the years, and I know you don't disagree with those principles as a way to run our government. The question was raised about why is it not more detailed in this bill about the process, about the commission turning this over to the legislature, because constitutionally you still have the obligation to vote on the maps. So I would direct you to page 4, lines 4 through 8. That doesn't go into the same detail that the original House Bill 706 did 2 years ago, but rather says it now gets turned over to the legislature. One of the complaints from some people, including the governor 2 years ago, was that there is something unconstitutional about this. And so we're trying to make very clear that this is constitutional. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that New Hampshire has a number of commissions. I tried to look them up online. I got to at least 15, including something like the Public Utilities Commission, for instance. The state is responsible for a number of things. But the legislators themselves don't do all that decision-making. You don't have time. And you don't get paid for that much work either, let's be honest. So we appoint commissions. You appoint commissions, and they have legislators sitting on some of them. They have the state treasurer on some of them. And then the work is done by the commission, and it is turned over for final votes to the legislature. This independent advisory redistricting commission does the same thing. By not having sitting legislators on it, it ensures that nobody is acting in self-interest, but ultimately it is the legislature that votes on it. So in order to reassure the voters who've had their faith in the process shaken, both by 2011 and by Steve Stepanik's comment last week, I think it is very important that this bill be passed and that you start building that public trust again by voting ought to pass on Senate Bill 80. So thank you. I'm sorry this got so complicated this morning, but I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you. And I'd be glad to take questions if you have any. And if there are questions about my written testimony, I'd be glad to answer them via email later. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jessica, are we finished or where are we?
I don't have anybody else on the list and I don't see any more hands raised.
All righty. While we're waiting for the hands, I do want to make a public comment about the comment from the chair of the Republican Party. Certainly that the senators here on both the Republican and the Democratic senators have taken an oath to uphold the Constitution. There is no one that is pressuring me to or not to from the party to do anything. I will, no matter who is in charge of the redistricting process, I'm sure that will be assigned by the Senate President later this year, that they will follow the procedures in RSA 91A, and those procedures will be open to the public. Certainly, as I mentioned before, there will be caucuses on both sides of what to do and how to do it. But those the proceedings, the public proceedings will happen. Unfortunately, apparently 10 years ago, if and I have no reason to question the person who testified that they were only available for 24 hours beforehand. I'll certainly try to work to make sure that there is adequate notice to the public if I am on or happen to chair that committee. So with that, did anybody else sign up? Okay, we'll close this public hearing, and I would like to get a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Okay, Senator Birdsell moves to go into seconded by Senator Susie. We will call the roll. Senator Birdsell.
Senator Birdsell votes aye.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Susie.
Senator Susie votes yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes.
Votes yes. We are in executive session. The two bills that I wanted to talk about right off is that we've had a request from the prime sponsor of Senate Bill 53 to re-refer. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Senator Ward made some motion, senated by Senator Perkins Quokka. Is there any comments or anything on that bill? Senator,
If I may, just that it's honoring the request of the prime sponsor.
yep. And with that, we will call the roll. Senator Birdsell.
Yes.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Susie.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
I would move consent, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Susie moves consent. Do I have a
Second.
second? Seconded by Senator Birdsell. Comments? Call the roll. Senator Birdsell.
Yes.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Susie.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. I told Senator Perkins Quokka that she would get a chance to take a bill out. There we go, at my first opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Chair.
All right. The other thing that I brought up is that we do have the amendment to Senate Bill, I believe it's 31, is it? Trish?
Yes.
And you've all gotten that. It is what we talked about in committee, but you know, is written down now. Does anyone have any comments on the bill? I would take a motion on the bill then.
Move ought to pass.
Senator Birdsall moves ought to pass,
Second.
seconded by Senator Susie. Okay, comments, questions? Okay, we'll call the roll. Senator Birdsall?
Wait, don't we have an amendment that we have to?
Yeah, we have to bring forth the amendment first.
That's true. I'm
You all have to do that.
go too quickly.
I almost said something, but I'm new here, so.
Move ought to pass on, is it 0010S?
I have it right here.
0065.
Oh, 0065.
Thank you.
Okay, I move ought to pass on 0065S.
Right,
Second,
seconded by Senator Ward. Senator Perkins Polka?
Yeah, just a question, Chair. Do you think that it would make sense to add a fiscal note, given the amendment? I think it may just add clarifying information to understand what kind of burden or cost this would add to the Secretary of State.
I don't know that this materially changes the decision on whether I needed a financial note or not. I don't believe so. Maybe one of the senators that's even got more experience than myself would like to comment.
I haven't talked to, I can actually text Dave Scanlon and see, but I don't think it changes the fiscal note at all.
Okay.
Well, and I think that review would be done by the OLS. If the amendment substantially changes it, OLS would refer it to LBA.
Okay, so after we pass, if we were to pass the amendment today, that process will sort of automatically take place.
It should, because until we actually cast a vote as a Senate, it technically hasn't changed until the whole Senate has amended the bill.
Got it. Okay, thanks for the clarification. Appreciate that.
And Senator Susie, am I correct that if a bill does pass in the Senate, then the Finance Committee can also, it can be forwarded to them to look at as well?
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any further discussion? We'll call the roll on the amendment. 0065S, Senator Birdsall.
Senator Birdsall votes yes.
Senator Ward.
Ward votes yes.
Senator Susie.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Perkins Quokka votes yes.
And the chair votes yes. Now we have the motion already made for ought to pass as amended.
Yes.
Okay, further discussion. Seeing none, call the roll. Senator Birdsall.
Yes.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Susie.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Do I have a further motion?
And we go out of exec?
No, to put it on consent. You can vote to go out of exec too. I did have a couple things I wanted to say.
Make a motion, we put it on consent.
Second.
Senator Ward moves consent, seconded by Senator Birdsall. Okay, further no discussion on that, I guess. Senator Birdsall.
Yes.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Susie.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Quokka.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right. For everybody
Do you want to
have-
take that out, Senator Gray? Sorry.
Sure, I can take it out. We have received all of the bills in this last batch. They are all subject to being scheduled. But remember that in February, we have President's Day followed by the next Monday, which is part of the Senate vacation. So I've crammed them in a little bit, but we still should have time to consider them. The FN bills will be a priority moving forward to make sure that we meet their deadline. I believe it's second week in March for that, the 11th or so.
Yes.
So we will be cognizant of that. Those people who want to offer amendments on the bills that we've heard, I want you to keep that in mind. There was a discussion with the Secretary of State, which talked about our bill to require photo identification and absentee. There is some discussion right now about having that on the application, ask for the New Hampshire driver's license or last 4 digits of the Social Security number or other identification information that's acceptable to. And so again, there is things going on there. I think that from what I've heard, both Republicans and Democrats could support that better than the provisions that are in the bill. That is certainly not set in stone yet. And I brought it up here in case the members of the minority party wanted to have any input into it. The only way I can really tell you about that is to do it here so that I don't violate any laws and want you to know about it. Does anyone have any comments on any of the other bills they want to share with the committee members? Senator Perkins Coker.
Just to let the committee know that I'm working on an amendment to SB 46 that I will bring forward as soon as it's ready.
All righty. With that, if there's no further discussion, we'll take a motion to leave executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Senator Birdsall.
Yes.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Susie.
Yes.
Boca.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We are out of executive session. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Senator Birdsall.
Yes.
Senator Ward.
Yes.
Senator Susie.
Yes.
Senator Perkins Cuoco.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right, we will see you Monday. So,
Thank you.
thank
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Have a good weekend.